I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about God of War Ragnarok before you buy the game. So you know, is this game going to be right for you? Should you buy? Shouldn't you buy? Let's get into the nitty gritty. I'm going to do my best to avoid any serious spoilers. There's going to be like minor spoilers as far as like you'll have swords or something, right? Or something like that. But there's not going to be anything major. Right when I made this video, we were on day 0 of launch, which was the creators who got the early access key one day before everyone else. I've been sitting here for literally all day long, watching videos and taking clips and things to show you guys so that you don't have to. So you'll know what's going on before you buy the game. The first clip I want to show you is from a popular Twitch streamer named CoCarnage. And he was talking about how does God of War 2018 compare to the new God of War Ragnarok. And the TLDR is it's kind of like the same game. And if you like God of War, you'll like the sequel, basically. But let's hear it from his own stream, what he had to say in this clip.
Is this much different from the recent God of War? It's very similar in a lot of ways, but it's more content. So the way that I think the best way to describe it is, if you like the last God of War, you'll probably really like this too. If you didn't like the last God of War, I don't think there's going to be enough in this game to tide you over. It's a slightly upgraded version of God of War.
So that was his take on it, and from me watching the game, I had multiple tabs open and was watching multiple people trying to see all different parts of the game, because in my job, I just have to take spoilers, right? That's my job. And I'd say that take was pretty accurate. I mean, it's like, you know, God of War 1, but just a little bit better, you know? But then obviously a different story. It's not the same story, but, you know, if you like God of War, the 2018 God of War, then you're going to like the sequel. It's going to be a good game for you, like almost no matter what. If you actually hated God of War 2018 for whatever reason, whatever you didn't like the game mechanics or something like that, then you might not like this one, because game mechanic wise and stuff, it's very similar. The next thing I want to run you through are some first impressions that different streamers had. I know some people are like, nobody cares about streamers' opinion, but still just three random people's opinions on the game after playing the first, say, 6 to 10 hours, 8 hours, whatever of gameplay. What was their, you know, gut reaction at the end of it? What did they have to say about it? I've got 3 different reactions like that to share with you to help you form an opinion on it. First up was Lyric, another popular Twitch streamer. All these people are at least somewhat known Twitch streamers, or at least like tens of thousands of followers or something, right? So this is Lyric, who's been around for however many years. He was ending his stream and then talking about the game just really quick for like 10 seconds, and here's like a clip of that.
I am going to continue tomorrow 1,000%. This game is, you know, I'm nowhere near anywhere near completion, but I was digging it. I'm down. I'm excited to continue tomorrow. I am going to.
So his impression was it was good. It was a good game. He was having fun. So that's like, I don't know. That's something to think about. And here's another first impression from another Twitch streamer. It was really hard to find English-speaking Twitch streamers, but this was Aliska, if I'm saying that right, who had like almost 70,000 followers. And this was at the end of her stream and what her impression was at that point.
But it's been really fun. I am very much enjoying this game. It's so good.
So that's just another thought, you know, good reception. It's kind of like the reception I've seen from most people that I was watching. And the last random impression I have to share with you was from Quinn69, who has around 700,000 followers on Twitch. And this was his impression, same scenario, after playing all day, at the end of the stream. What did he have to say about it? And here's what he had to say.
Mate, God of War is looking clean. It's tight. It's tight. And the bosses so far have been tight as fuck.
But let's move on from Twitch streamer reactions, and let me really quick show you this article by Zarmena Khan. And the main point of this article is that God of War Ragnarok is the best reviewed PS4 game, 2022's second highest rated game, which if I remember this correctly, number 1 is Elden Ring. So Metacritic aggregate score of 94 out of 100 based on 117 reviews. It's the same thing as the title. It's the only thing in front of it is Elden Ring, which is a 96 out of 100 based on just 84 reviews. And God of War 2018 also earned similar universal acclaim and sits at 94 out of 100 based on 118 reviews. As PlayStation Lifestyles Mac noted in his review, God of War Ragnarok is almost perfectly executed with satisfying combat, incredible graphics, and excellent characters. Our sisters at Game Revolution expressed similar sentiments, praising the game's world and side content. And I can tell you right now, from what I've watched of the game, I would totally agree with it. Now, I don't want to spoil things for you, but there are definitely scenes in this game and fights in this game that are very satisfying, very epic, very dramatic. They'll draw you in. There's a little bit of issues with combat, though, that I do want to point out to you, which may also have been an issue on the other God of War, which is that you can run into scenarios where the combat starts to feel like it drags on a little bit, where you're just like, okay, I've killed like 12 humanoid enemies and here's like 8 more for me to kill, which is like not that bad. I feel like it just depends on how you do side quests and things. Like if you do enough side quests and keep up with things and I keep your like, you know, gear strong enough and things to where you can just kind of just farm the enemies, then it never really hits that point. But if you're like only doing the main story, there's a chance you could kind of run into that. And I feel like it more so happens early than it does later on, because later on you get so many more tools and ways to do combat that it becomes less like that. But that also brings me to another point I want to make, which is from what I saw, the difficulty. You'd be really careful with the difficulty based on what kind of game experience you want, because the hardest difficulty does seem to have an element of like damage sponging, which if you don't know what that means, it's like, especially early on, or like kind of early, but like a little bit after the early game, it seemed like you run in the scenario where you're just beating on some basic enemy for like 30 seconds to kill it, and there's like 8 of them, and then the fight takes like 5 minutes just because you have to make contact with them with your weapon like 30 times or 20 times before you do enough damage to just kill one of the enemies. And then bosses can get even more extreme. And also on the hardest difficulty, you don't get 1 shot, but you often will get like 3 shot or 4 shot depending on like bosses and things. The enemies do a lot of damage. And there's ways to like get more health and things so you're not as squishy. But if you do pick hardest, be aware there is an element of damage sponge on the enemies. That's like, it's not as bad as some other games. It's reasonable, but just be aware that's a thing. If that's something you don't want to deal with, then don't play on the hardest difficulty if you buy this game. I also watched people who played on just like the normal difficulty, and it definitely seemed like the game was built for that difficulty. Everything kind of flowed a lot better. The fights didn't drag out forever. The boss fights still took a minute, but they weren't just totally insane. And also do want to touch on the boss fights. I don't know if you played God of War 2018, but the boss fights are pretty satisfying. They're not at the level of, say, Elden Ring, but they're like the next closest thing in a way, where it will take, especially on the hardest difficulty, an element of skill to not lose to the bosses. The lower difficulty is a lot more forgiving because you can take like, 10 to 20 hits depending on your gear and stuff before you go down or something like that. But there are a lot of boss mechanics, a lot of, dodging and weaving and blocking and parry and stuff like that, and a lot of cool enemy attacks. Like, they really put a lot of work into enemy designs, and it really shows in this game, and I personally am fairly impressed with it. I think it's pretty solid. Something else I want to touch on, though, is like the open worldness of the game and side quests and that element of it. Now, I'm not going to go into spoiler detail, but the game is not open world in the same level or at the same level as Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild. Do not expect that level of open world in a game like this. It's very linear. It's very like you're going down paths a lot of the time, like very skinny paths in a lot of the game. And then there's other elements where there's a lot of like, I don't know, grid-like patterns, but another, like depending on like a village or something, right? But there are some sections that are a little bit more open. There'll maybe be like a lake, for example, and multiple places you can go, or like it gets a little more open in some places, especially side areas. But the main story stuff is very path-like. I mean, you are just on a path always. Like, it's just, how can they mask you just being on a path? So be aware, if that's something you don't like at all, then that's something to think about, because that's how most of the game's gonna go. But on that topic, side quests, I do have another clip I want to show you. I have another clip from CohhCarnage that I mentioned earlier in this video, and this was right after he had done this kind of somewhat early game side quest, and it was a pretty elaborate side quest, and I just want to have you hear his take on side quests in general in God of War Ragnarok.
That was a great side quest. That was a great side quest. Wow. Yeah, great storytelling. A little level, like that was a really, really good quest.
Okay.
So yeah, that was his take on the side quests, and I've watched enough of the game at this point, at least the first, say, 10, 20 hours of gameplay, depending on who I was watching, to say that there's decent side quests. The side quests are not like some games where the side quests are very, I don't know how to explain it, like very chintzy. These side quests in this game, maybe not all of them, but the ones I saw were pretty well thought out. The dialogue and scripting was actually, you could tell they put effort in. I know there's a lot of games where side quests, you can almost tell it was like someone else's job on the team, and so whoever was doing it was like totally out of sync with the style and feel of the rest of the game. In God of War Ragnarok, that did not seem to be the case. Everything kind of seemed like it was made by the same storytellers and writers and everything. So even the side quests, if you're big into 100%ing a game and doing the side quests, they actually seemed like they would be a good time. You know, I don't know how they compare to a game like Witcher 3 side quests, but they definitely would be somewhat comparable at times. It definitely seemed good. And all this brings me to one last thing that I want to talk about before ending this out, which is how long will it take you to beat this game? How much content is there in God of War Ragnarok? Now, I watched one person who binged it literally all day long, and God, I don't know, at this point, I think he'd been going for like 14 hours or something like that, and this person was like only doing those main stories, straight down the middle, main story only, skipping everything, not like the level of a speed run, but playing it to where like zero side quests, zero anything, skipping things, whatever. And I don't know where the game ends, but like it seemed like he was maybe halfway through at that point or something. Like at most he was like 2/3 of the way done at like the 14-hour mark of only doing main story. So based off of that, and assuming it even ends where I would imagine it ends, I don't know. Maybe you don't know how it's going to get dragged out. Maybe it seemed like it was 2/3, but he was actually going to just loop around and keep going on with main story for another 20. Like, I don't actually know for sure. But I can give you a minimum, which is like minimum 20 hours. Like, for a normal human being, actually just only doing main story, minimum is going to be like 20 hours. But it might be like 30. And the maximum main story only might be like 40. Like, that's kind of where it seemed like it was going to be. Then there's the question of, what if you kind of just take your time, you do side quests, you explore a lot, and you do the main story? I mean, you might have like 30 to 100 hours of gameplay, depending on how you do that. And then if you're going to 100% get every single item and stuff, like, I'm kind of guessing based off what I saw, but it's like pure 100% might take you like, I don't know, 60 to 200 hours. I'm not sure exactly, but it's like there's a lot of content is the point that I'm making. This is not a game that you're going to pay $60, $70 for, and then you're just only going to be able to play it for, say, 10 hours. Like, you know, Stray wasn't $70, but a game like Stray was literally like 8 hours for anybody almost. This game will keep you busy if you want to. Even if you just do main story, you'll have fun, assuming you like the game. You'll have fun for a good, like, 20 to 40 hours. Almost like the old school days, like Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation 1 and 2, where it was like, you get in one of those games and you're there for, like, 60 hours sometimes, you know. It's like, I don't know, it'll take that long for your main story only, but my main point is, there's a lot of content, guys. There's actually a decent amount of content for you to play through. And one final thing to mention that I should have mentioned in the beginning is, if you're not aware, this is a PlayStation exclusive game. You'll need a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 5 to play God of War Ragnarok. If the past is any marker for the future, then it'll probably get ported to PC on Steam in like a year or something. So if you don't have a PlayStation and you don't want to buy one, then you're going to have to be one of the people where you just are like, I'll just wait it out till it's on PC. And if you have an Xbox and not a PC or PlayStation, you are just out of luck entirely. But yeah, so that's like the first impressions of God of War Ragnarok. Based on what I saw, it looks like it will be a fun time for a lot of players. It's like, I don't know, not as good as Elden Ring was, but it's still insanely good. And I feel like there's people who would like God of War who hated Elden Ring. And there's probably people who love Elden Ring and aren't really going to like God of War. But overall, like, if someone just gave you the game for free, I feel like good 95% of players who play these types of games would have fun. So however that helps you make your decision. Hopefully this video helped you out to give you a better impression of what's actually going to happen. I tried to, have no spoilers in this almost at all. But yeah, so that's like the first impressions of God of War. That's what I think about it. That's what some of the other people I saw thought about it. Overall, seems like a pretty solid game. If you have a PlayStation and you want to have fun for a few weeks or a week or a few days, depending how you game, casually or hardcore, it's definitely a viable option. It could definitely keep you busy through November and you could have a good time. So that's God of War Ragnarok. It is out midnight in everyone's time zone on the 9th, so the beginning of the 9th of November. So whenever this video comes out, it'll in my time zone, it's probably going to be like an hour after this video comes out or something. But yeah, so it's basically out now when you probably see this. But good game. Definitely worth checking out if you have the money for it. And I would, I highly recommend if it's within your budget. God of War Ragnarok seems like a pretty solid game. That's what everyone I saw thought as well. It should just be a pretty fun time. This has been Kibbles, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.